So I think I sent that the last two meetings, but I didn't send it this one.
I can find it.
So, okay, we're ready to go. I guess we're recording. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:21, with 4 members present, so we have our quorum, and I don't see anybody from the public, so we're not going to have a public comment. First order of business was approval of the minutes, and we have 3 sets of things to go over. Were the 2 sets of question and answer notes from back in June 6th, I think, and dates. One was the 603 solar, and one was the revision energy notes. And then one was May 27th, and one was June 1st. Did everybody have a chance to read? And we have a motion to approve those question and answer minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, those are approved. The second part of that is the June 6th meeting. And Roberta had circulated those minutes. If everybody, there were a couple spelling changes. I just made the spelling changes.
Oh, okay.
I didn't make any substantive changes.
Can you list them for me, just which one I'm doing?
I will. They were just so minor. I just
Okay.
did it, and I was rushing out the door. So it's basically like capital letters and a couple of just raw spelling.
Okay, my text.
If everybody has read those over, can we have a motion to approve the June minutes?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the June 6th have been approved. There was no meeting in July, unfortunately. We didn't have a quorum, so there are nothing to approve from July. And next item is just a quick update from Tony on the town council.
So I don't have a whole lot to report. Let me find my notes from the town council. So in the summer, the town council meets only once in July and once in August. I think that the biggest impact for this committee is that we had our first reading for the resolution to join the
Right.
Community Power Coalition at our July meeting, and so we'll have our second reading, and we'll be voting
At the next
presumably
meeting.
at our August meeting on August 18th.
Right. Happy to attend that if it makes sense.
I think
And,
so.
I can answer any questions. And, we came to, Henry came to the last meeting too. I told him, but he just wanted to show face and be there. So I think he'll probably
I
come too.
might reach out to him and just say that he is welcome to give a presentation. He forwarded that presentation
Right.
to Steve and I, and Steve and I met with him, and it really, I think that Steve had some questions about how it would work and what it would mean for the community, what it would mean for residents, and what the liability is, and,
Right.
and really there's none
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. It's only, it's really easy, and there's no downside
Right.
at this point. So, Henry, which is why it ended up on the agenda
Right,
pretty
good.
quickly without any real concerns.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I had included this coalition note. I'm going to keep forwarding those. I think it's important the committee at least just be paying going on if you're not on their mailing list. If it's redundant, just tell me and I won't send it out. But they do have enough members now to legally form their corporation or their nonprofit. And so I think Newmarket, this month we'd be the 7th member, I think, 7th or 8th member. And again, the important part of that is there's no upfront commitment initially. It's only once they start purchasing power, and that's going to be several months out, if not a year, right? That's going to take to form, so.
I would think.
Yeah. Okay, anything else?
I'm just looking real quick to see what else is on the agenda, because I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, those are like I think that's probably the biggest, issue again that would impact this committee, that we're also gonna be voting on, an increase in the bag fees for solid waste, so that's gonna be a big deal.
Can I get those current numbers of, like, do we have numbers, or does the town council, or, do we keep track of how many bags are actually purchased and sold?
We don't get numbers of bags necessarily,
How
but we
do
do
they
get
track
the revenue,
Yeah,
so just the straight number.
and how does that work? You know, because obviously different retail operations sell the bags. How does the actual purchase of the bags work, and the revenue? Like, so if, you know, if Newberry Farms is selling bags, how do they?
I won't pretend to know
Oh,
how.
That'd be a pretty easy metric to follow,
I mean, I
though.
don't think it's complicated. I think, you know, DPW buys the bags, distributes them.
and do they
you know.
just, like, so do they just sell a bulk set of bags and they pay for them when they get them?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I mean, they have their system, and I trust that it's working correctly.
is that Rick Malasky would be the person to ask about that?
Yeah, or Steve.
I was just
Yeah.
curious how that.
Yeah,
But
I don't know
again,
if they-
that's
I
a
don't know if
really-
they pay up front or if they're billed. I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess that's a really pretty.
But that's a really
straightforward.
easy way potentially to track solid waste, you know, how many bags are sold per unit of time.
Well, because the bags don't necessarily.
Yeah,
Because
they
we
don't.
track tonnage.
Well, okay.
So the sales of the bags just offset our cost.
Right.
So that's all that is.
But you are measuring the amount of solid waste produced. Okay.
Yes.
It'd
yeah.
be just
That's
interesting to
how
see
we're
when the price goes
charged.
up, if solid waste
Yes.
goes down, which it probably
Right, so we have, so with Waste Management, we have a contract, right?
Exactly.
That gets renewed, and when they bring their trucks, paying the trucks for the tonnage that
Right.
they're dumping, I assume that's how they're billing us, so, you know, like I said, based on what I'm hearing at the Regional Planning Commission level, all of those fees are going up, and people are getting worried, because New Hampshire right now does not have a solid waste disposal plan per se for the state. And they're closing, pretty much everything's closing down, and I think there's only like one or two facilities left.
Mhm.
So, you know, the questions are, will there be someone moving towards an incineration you know, how's it gonna work? And again, that's why some of the local communities are starting to do more recycling again locally, just to try and rein in some of that cost. So,
That's why we started the composting program.
right, yeah, you know, so again, I think it's important that we try to continue to tell people, you know, here's a way you're gonna take, you know, some of your waste out of the, you know, the fee that we'd be paying. Well, again, Newmarket still pays for that,
Right.
but I'm assuming it's probably at less of a level than if it was going into the waste management truck, I don't know, hopefully.
I don't think, it's
But
so
still, it's being-
hard to judge like it's
Yeah.
not apples to apples, so
Right.
it's so hard to say, and I
Right.
won't pretend to solve the workings of the solid waste program, but I mean, it's not inexpensive to have the composting,
Right,
but in addition to whatever, like even if it's the same dollar amount,
right,
we're saving in the
Landfill
sense that
space.
we're not putting that in the landfill. So
Right.
it's future savings that we kind of can't quite calculate,
right,
or maybe somebody can, but somebody much more adept with their mathematics than me.
Right.
So, and I think that communicating that is going to be really important when we, as a town, you know, and I assume that we're going to vote in favor of raising the bag prices. We haven't raised the bag prices in 8 years.
yeah,
And we're really comparable to other towns. We're actually quite a bit lower than a lot of the other towns around us. So it's time.
I would say what would be interesting to me is just to have a little more transparency on the whole pricing scheme around the, you know, waste transfer, from whoever it is, Waste Management, Inc., how, in looking over time, how is, I'm assuming that price keeps going up, right?
Mhm.
So, again, that's part of justifying council's making a decision. You're probably taking all that into consideration, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's all been a very transparent process.
Right. Okay. Oh, and the other thing you guys voted on, obviously I was there, so I'm get reinstated as the Newmarket rep on the Regional Planning Commission. So
Right.
I didn't even know my time had run out.
Surprise.
Okay. All right, thanks, Tony. Next on the list is our Solarize Newmarket campaign. And we went through sort of this long drawn-out and somewhat incomplete RFP matrix and evaluation. And it's time to make a decision. I had sent around a copy of this, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the combined scores. And the combined scores are pretty close in the end, again, it's just, we didn't get any real scoring from Ellen, and Chris didn't really score it, but she weighed in with some recommendations on a vendor choice. And the total combined average scores were 85 for revision and 83.8 for 603 solar. So they're very comparable, and really overall there were just minor differences between the two. So at this point, I think everybody should just comment one more time. We'll just go around the table and have one set of comments on what's your recommendation. You want to start with that, Roberta?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like all things being very nearly equal. I said before, well, I was impressed with how much 603 can do for being a much smaller company than Revision. I still remain fairly disturbed by the comments they made when asked about reaching out to economically disadvantaged people. It's one thing to understand, they're smaller. These campaigns probably do work more effectively if they obviously get customers that can afford it more easily. The nature of his comments, the assumptions behind them suggest that the real issue as a whole has not thought about it. They didn't sound like they had plans to in the future. He didn't seem to think there was any potential for his company if he did it, and I think morally and ethically I have to stick with my belief that we should go with Revision. Even if this campaign doesn't bring in a lot of sociology, they're better positioned and sound more, as Ellen and Peter both pointed out at that meeting, their status as a B corporation, which, as Ellen said at the time, if they got that status, they had to have metrics to back it up. They had to have done the public good.
Right.
And they talked pretty extensively about it as well. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, good. Yep. Tony?
I liked both companies, and I think that they would probably both do a great job with this campaign. But having listened to both presentations, I definitely preferred Revision. So
Okay.
I know that when I listed out the evaluation, they scored higher for me. So.
Okay. Anders?
And as I've said before, I think a monopoly is a bad thing just as a general premise. However, I agree that Revision certainly seemed to provide better access. I really think the big thing here is to provide access to renewable energy for people who are struggling and might not otherwise do it. I mean, you and I did
Right,
it
yeah.
because we felt and we had fortunately the resources to do it, but there are a lot of people who might be on the fence, who really need the financing, who need the backing of a bigger company, who might have access that a smaller company might not have, to open the doors a little bit to people who otherwise it would be a barrier to entry. Because, as good as renewables sound, but it always comes down to the bottom line, comes down to the dollar. And if people can't afford it, then it's just not gonna happen. So we really, I feel, ethically need to go with the outfit, which I think I agree is Revision, that has the most ability to provide access to people who might not otherwise do it.
Yeah, okay. For me, again, I keep trying to I'm trying to keep working through the thought process. Why couldn't we have two vendors involved? But again, I don't kind of want to stand in the way of a decision being made on that either. I personally feel like we probably could engage both vendors and make it just very clean for anybody to, move forward with a quote for a solar system. I don't really feel that, well, we're going to talk about the low and moderate income part further down on the notes too, because I've invested a fair amount of time trying to explore some of those avenues. And you're right, Revision as a B Corp does have some additional sort of organizational responsibility to try and respond to that audience. So I'm happy to stick with Revision, and we'll make, if we're all voting on that, I think we can take a vote and say Revision has 4 votes here, and we'll make a recommendation to Town Council to accept Revision as the Solarize Newmarket campaign for the next year.
Yep,
Does
I
that
agree
make
with
sense?
that. I do think market forces may play a role here, but I really had a better, and that I think is what this is all about, is providing this opportunity for people who might not otherwise have it. And I think that Revision certainly has a better plan
Yeah.
to do so.
Okay.
It's just that simple.
Well, then can we have a motion to accept, or I guess we have to vote, right? So is it a vote or just, it's not a vote?
Or, I can make a motion to accept Revision as the vendor for the Solarize Newmarket campaign.
Okay,
Second?
okay, Andrew seconds the motion, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, we got that out of the way, so I will write up a letter for Steve, that'll go to the town council, that probably won't get acted on until September, I would guess, right? Or
For
is
the
this?
first meeting in September, so as long
Yeah.
as it gets in,
Right.
yeah. One thing that I would, as a committee, maybe we could discuss is, one of the things that I really liked about Revision's model was like this idea that they could give back a little bit, like if they have 10 projects, I forget exactly how if it was by panel or by dollar amount, or,
Right.
they could donate a panel or,
Right.
to a project.
Mhm.
And one of the projects that, I think that we should consider is the new splash pad.
Right, yeah,
Because when I went, I toured it. I said to Amy, did you ever consider about putting
well, there
solar
was,
panels on the building? And she said, no. Like it wasn't. It was
there
just
was a
so-
proposal back then to have, that's over by,
The
where
rec
the ball
center.
fields are and everything, yeah, and wasn't there a proposal way back when to put solar panels in the field in back of those houses there? I'm pretty sure
Oh, I
there
don't
was
know.
when I was on the planning board,
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
and I think it just never got off the ground for some reason, but I would agree, that would be a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we could just like on that little building, maybe that would be just enough of a,
Right,
of a
yeah, because they're
Program
running
for
pumps and
us.
things.
Every
Right.
panel helps.
Yeah,
Right.
it does.
Yep.
so.
All right, good. Well, I'd like to skip ahead to the last item there, just because we were talking about low and moderate income. With Eversource had put out an RFI about low and moderate income community solar projects in New Hampshire. And so I kind of started digging into that a little bit. It's a real conundrum. The legislation that got passed doesn't make it clear how that's going to happen. And so what Eversource has done is they made a request for information from various vendors to say, gee, we maybe support this low and moderate income proposal, find ways that we can reduce their Eversource energy bill by qualifying them, and community solar is one. So basically what it comes down to is, right now, if someone in the way I went about this was, I contacted Pastor Patty at the community church, and I said, your roof is facing solar, you're a nonprofit organization, you're a church, and you have the food pantry here every week with obviously low and moderate income families that are coming through you every week. Would you be able to identify 5 low and moderate income families that would benefit from solar panels on your roof? Because that's essentially what community solar is. If you decide to put solar panels on and you want to have low and moderate income people be the beneficiaries, you have to identify a minimum of 5 families that qualify at no more, there's certain numbers, but it's basically 300% of the federal poverty guidelines. And you have to qualify for that. The catch-22 in the whole law is there's no way to really identify who those low and moderate income families are. There's 2 forms that the New Hampshire Department collects data on. I think one's the DP8 and one's the PA29 when you do solar, whether you're getting a tax credit. On the DP8 form, they do collect all of that personal financial information to see if a homeowner qualifies for reduced property taxes and tax exemptions. But all of the information is sensitive and confidential, and the Department of Revenue has no responsibility to report that at the municipal level. And the only number, I'm going to pass this around, I'll start with you, Roberta, and you can pass it back, is that this, I think we might have 2 of them actually. Did I print another one? They have a summary number for what that figure is at the state level, but they don't break it down by town or any other way. So I called and I had several conversations with the Department of Revenue, and I was actually surprised at how welcoming they were to the conversation, because the guy I talked to totally got it, but he said, unless someone changes the law, we have no responsibility to give that information to a town in any way, shape, or form. So we can't tell you. So basically, the community solar program says you can have a community solar program, and you can, if you can find low and moderate income families, but there's not a good way to find them. And is on the host that when you do find them, you have to do all of the financial due diligence and paperwork to prove every year that they qualify for the financial thresholds, which puts a huge burden. It basically makes it so no one would ever want to do it, right? So it makes it so that it'll never happen.
And yet, revision does.
So how?
Options for, I don't know if they said low, but moderate income.
Right.
Peter, that's nothing new.
No, I know.
Yes,
So
every time there is any kind, we're seeing it with the god-awful eviction moratorium that just basically disappeared with only 12% of the money getting to the right people. That is not a good reason to not take down barriers.
I agree. So what I am going to try to keep doing, and then I'll report back to the committee. I'd kind of like to. I'm just trying to work this process through its logical conclusion.
I see.
So I'm trying to find a real project with potential real beneficiaries, and the church and everything else wrapped around that seems to be the model of what you would want to have happen, right?
Oh, I see.
So Pastor Patty's welcoming the idea. They would welcome some sort of fundraiser to put panels on the church, and she said, we will help you find identify those low and moderate income families. That's what they said. But then again, there's the actual mechanics of making that happen. What I'm trying to figure out is where, and this is what we need to engage with Revision too, if they become part of our solarized project, is how are they gonna help us cross that seemingly catch-22 impossible threshold to make a project like that happen? So what I'm proposing is that as a committee, we try to take a project like that with the church and see how far we can run with it, just to keep pushing up against sort of the administrative boundaries of everything that happens, so that we're educated as a committee.
It's a trial run,
Right.
basically.
To say, okay, where does this break down, right? Where does it work? Where does it break down? And come up some recommendations. And then it may in fact lead to, we have to find someone like that can champion that at the legislative level, that says, okay, we need some sort of amendment to the existing bills that make the LMI threshold more easily obtainable, right? So what Eversource obviously has some programs in place where they discount energy now. So one of the, I actually wrote back and responded on the RFI with what I found out about that. And I said, look, I said, Eversource could also make this problem go away more easily if you can identify who are those host low and moderate income families that are already qualifying for something under, and then we'll use your criteria. Because that, there's, if you read through the document that I sent you on the RFI, there's like 3 or 4 sections that say, how do people qualify? And one of them would be they're getting existing energy rebates now. So if Eversource or a utility company took on that burden, that removes it from whoever the host provider is to have to bear the burden of proof every year.
Right.
You know, if you have a solar project that's going for 25 years, and then you're supposed to, and you can only allocate a certain percentage of the electricity and the benefit, and then that person also has to be proven with the qualifying every year, or you have to find and substitute new people. It's a,
Yeah, because what happens if someone moves?
exactly, so
I mean,
it,
that's kind of a nightmare.
it's just, when I looked at that, I was just like, oh my God, this was just not a well program at all.
So
It
do the
really-
low-income people benefit from net metering? So basically those solar panels are net metering for those?
Yeah, well,
people?
and again, don't quote me on any of this, because it's just so convoluted and complicated, and it's hard to.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is, I'd like to really simplify it so that at some point we could go to the town council, hopefully with Revision or someone else, and say, here's the simple model. And here's a sample project that we could kickstart this thing and serve as a model, not only for Newmarket, but for other communities. So I've invested some time and effort in that, but basically the way it works is, yeah, you keep track of how much energy you generate through, there would be one net meter on that project. And then you would identify who the, again, minimum of 5 beneficiaries are, and they only get a certain, and it's not a lot. So the other thing is, there's so little payback, it's maybe like $30 a month that you would get off your energy bill. It's not a huge amount of money. So it's not like a super fantastic program where you're just erasing someone's energy burden. It's like,
What's the incentive for the host to host it? Like, what would be the incentive for Newmarket Community Church? I mean, our church, and I know their commitment to the community is probably a little bit different, but for any other host, like, what would be the
that's
incentive?
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Because I don't see one.
I'm still,
I thought that I had thought from the way you guys described your own experience that putting in solar panels does erase your energy bill.
well, it does.
Okay.
For example, the church probably would have, their roof is massive enough, they would have no energy bills,
Right.
right?
Okay, so that would
So,
be their
so the church would
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
not have an electric bill, and any surplus would be able to be farmed off to these other recipients,
Yeah.
right? Like, I asked Mike Hoffman about the Stone Church, and he said that actually doesn't fully, he said they have a pretty high energy bill because of refrigeration and other things. So that doesn't according to him anyway, in just a very short conversation, oh, and by the way, I think you said his retirement party was at 7:00. I showed up the other night at 7, and it was just about over. Everybody was there at 5:30. I missed his retirement party.
Oh,
But that's okay. I'm not blaming you. I jotted that down when I was in the meeting, 7:00, and I kind of laughed when I got there. I saw Chris Blackstone there, and that was it. It was funny. So anyway, that's kind of where I think our engagement as a committee could be to try to address the low and moderate income thing, is to try to understand the existing program that's in place, and then work it through the process to see if we can actually gain traction somewhere. So
Right.
that would be my recommendation. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to write that up a little bit in some sort of form once I do it, because it was just mind-numbing trying to go through
Does
it.
Eversource have any program for low to moderate income to try and?
They have, but they haven't really engaged. You know, they basically asked, their request for information was, what do you think?
Mhm.
I asked them back, I said, well, tell us what you have.
Because don't we pay everybody? I mean, even though I use no electricity and I come out net positive, I pay Eversource for the
Yeah.
privilege of hooking up to the grid, and part of that,
Right.
my understanding is to benefit renewable energy.
Yeah, again, I have to break down all of those cost charges. You know, there's the delivery charge, which is separate from the supplier charge.
But my understanding is that part of that is to fund a fund, like in Vermont, it's called Greener Mountain Power, where a portion of your bill every month goes to support renewable energy.
There you go. There's your homework. You come back to the next meeting, you give me the full answer to that, and I'll be so happy.
Because I think that really, I'm sure that's going on, and
Yeah.
the question is, where's this money going?
Yeah.
And a really good place for it to go would be to help people who otherwise couldn't or wouldn't do it,
Right.
do it.
So I'm trying to break that down. So like some of the stuff I'm doing with Henry on that community power thing is to try to have a template where you're breaking down what those charges are, so we can compare rates evenly, not just within Newmarket, but between Newmarket and other communities. And I've already kind of started that thing, because the whole tariff rate structure thing, oh my God, you want to talk about complicated. You know, there's different types of meters and different rates based on the meter, and then there's at least half a dozen different charges associated with getting your electricity. So, yeah,
I'll
you know,
find out.
yeah, and I'll share with you the stuff I'm doing now where that can
But
get
I know
input.
that stuff's going on, and the question is, where's
Yeah.
it going? And in Vermont, unfortunately, it's going to well-connected rich people who are putting up windmills, but it would be nice if it went to
Right,
low to moderate income people to put solar panels on their house.
right. So anyway,
Can I
that's,
just ask a question, just for clarification? What we're talking about with the low and moderate income is separate from our
yeah.
Energize.
So there is a
Sunrise.
community
Can't-
solar,
I just wanna make sure that it's,
Yes.
those are two separate,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, but as part of the Solarize project, we could welcome a community solar project, right? So
No,
you could.
well, but I think that we have to make that decision. Like,
Well,
otherwise it's just sort of, to me, it feels very messy.
Well, no,
Either
I
we
think that's a
have
question
this-
for revision, because again, they're basically coming back with sort of a reduced per panel cost, right?
Right, and
That's
that's
all
the
they're
Solarize
doing.
right,
So they could
exactly,
do
that's
that
it.
with the church or someone else, and then spin it into the rest of the community solar program. There's nothing, you know, I think our goal with the Solarize Newmarket campaign, and if revision is in fact chosen by the town council, would be get the maximum number of solar panels and energy production happening in Newmarket. And if some of, you know, it's not really our total concern whether it's just how revision gets that done. Whether they wind a community solar project into it, because this is where they're a B Corp. They should welcome the opportunity to take that headache away from us, right? Shouldn't they? Isn't that why we just voted for revision?
They should,
Yeah.
but but I guess in my mind, I'm voting on a residential solarized program.
Well, doesn't that resonate?
That was what I voted on.
Yeah, but everybody
Not a
just,
community solar program. Those are two different things to me.
but
I
everybody
mean,
just
that's
said one of
me.
the reasons for picking revision because they had a commitment to helping those less fortunate because of their B Corp status. So wouldn't we be,
I just think it gets very confusing.
I think I agree they are two separate, that a community solar, in some field somewhere, what my understanding is, we wanna make it, we wanna remove the barrier of entry as much as possible to people who would love to do solar panels, but they
Yeah.
look at the sticker price and say, no way.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, what we need to do is get as many panels on as many houses, however that might be, whether it be through Eversource or revision, to get the barrier to entry
okay,
as mitigated as possible. And then if we want to do a community solar farm, that's great. But really, we want Joe Schmo and Jane Schmo to put a roof.
right, okay.
That's what I
Exactly.
think.
That's because I think like anything on the church, like it's just a whole nother ball of wax that I don't know that.
I think they're two separate.
Two separate
Certainly,
issues,
they can go in
exactly.
parallel. But
Right.
yes, I would
Right.
love to see solar. They've got the perfect roof. It's
They
obviously
do.
facing south. It's
Yeah.
huge. Wham! Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it would be a huge PR. It would be in the newspaper. Probably, get some
Right.
ink in New Hampshire. Maybe not. Who knows? But yes. But I think that's a separate. In my opinion,
Okay.
what we really want to try and do is get Joe Citizen, Jane Citizen, to put solar panels on their roof if they can, and remove that barrier to entry, because solar is a good long-term investment, but unfortunately right now, it's a big upfront investment,
Yeah.
which is way more than people are able to stomach. And so getting it with a lease to own, whatever it might be, which is what they do in Vermont, you don't get a $30,000, $35,000 bill. You offset your electricity, and at the end of 10 years, you own the system.
Yeah.
So,
And really, like if we're looking at, we have 60-something solar projects, right, currently in Newmarket. I mean, what's our housing stock? I mean, you drive around Lady Slipper, like just as an example for a neighborhood, there are 1-2 houses that maybe have solar panels. So, I mean, we have a lot of work to do with just the residential
Yeah,
piece
no
of it
question.
all. Like a
Yeah.
lot. So I
Yeah.
think that we can focus on that and maybe focus on both at the same time, but I don't know, like this.
but I think the church should be a great thing.
Right.
Look at this,
Right.
this
Yeah.
great iconic building in Newmarket. It's getting solar panels through revision. Eversource is helping to pay for it. This is how it's done. Everybody get around it. And by the way, you can do it too.
Yeah.
I think that's a great bit.
If we, at some point in the future, decide to pursue a parallel program, it sounds like do you suppose we might also have to go through an RFP again and, or if we're already working with revision, can we
Well,
just say, hey?
not only if it's a
customer owns
municipal
something.
project like the one that we
Oh.
talked about off of,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work on like if like you're looking at say something at the community church. I'm not sure how that would work for the town to be involved in that.
I
That's
don't
a
think the
good
town would
point,
be
too.
involved in that.
Yeah. So which means this committee wouldn't be.
Yeah,
But
Right.
that's
Right.
a little different than a solar farm in a.
Yes.
Very different.
Right.
Yes.
Very
Yes,
different.
yes, yes, yes.
which is what Newmarket is considering, and we actually have numbers and have been working with
Which they
revision.
should, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, well, I hope that's useful information, but like I said, I kind of feel like it's part of our task is to keep being educated enough about that so that we can make recommendations when the time comes. So, anyway, that's where we are on the low and moderate income thing. I'm gonna go back to the Community Power of New Hampshire update, which was number 3 on our agenda there. Status update was, that was, we made a recommendation to the town council, and again, that's gonna come up in the August meeting. So, with any luck, and if we have done our homework, they'll hopefully make a decision that Newmarket can become the next member of Community Power Coalition. There's no real upfront commitment to anything there until such time as someone decides to buy power. And I'll parallel with that, I sent off to you, we had received an inquiry from Standard Power, which is Good Energy. Standard Power is a joint company that does the same thing. So I had sent, there's a 2-page memorandum of understanding. They are basically competing with Community Coalition. So, and they have just signed up, I think, Keene, New Hampshire, and they are sort of the third-party broker that will be putting together that same type of agreement that Community Power. So I would just ask everybody to just take a quick look at that. And they had actually done a webinar through Clean Energy New Hampshire last week or the week before. So that's basically the only competitor that I've been able to find so far. And I thought it would be important, as we can, even if we decide to join Community Power, that we know what are the other alternatives out there, so that we can so that we can address that if it comes up at town council. So one of the things that might come up at the town council meeting is, are there other alternatives? And I want them to know, yes, there are. Good Energy and Standard Power it's a Nashua-based company, and Good Energy is somewhere else on the East Coast. I think Standard Power is just kind of like their Northeast affiliate thing. So if we were going to explore something besides that, that would probably could be on our list of something to explore. And again, by signing a memorandum of understanding, there's no obligation in the same way until such time as you decide to commit to a contract. So, if the town council hesitates or has some secondary thoughts on what happens, we could come in and we could say, you could compare these in parallel for the next, I don't know if that's something we want to do or not.
I think,
right? Or whether you,
honestly,
Yeah.
I think it muddies the water.
I do too. I
And
think it does too, but
I think it would end up not passing
yeah.
at our August 18th meeting if
Yeah.
we suddenly introduced another
I
vendor.
just felt that it's important that we acknowledge that there is competition out there to Community Power Coalition, because we're still not guaranteed that Community Power Coalition will be successful in the end, right? The legislation could change, things might not go their way, they might not be able to pull it off in the end. And then where are we a year down the road? We're no further down the road. Whereas other communities like Keene or other that have signed on with Good Energy and Standard Power might be marching along. So I think we need to always have a backup plan in our back pocket. And to me, that would be the way to do it, is to at least continue. It doesn't hurt to have the conversation, right? And it lights a fire under everybody, just like I said with any other vendors. It's like getting 2 quotes for something. So I'm not making a proposal to move that forward. I just would ask everybody to be aware that that's out there, to read through their memorandum of understanding, potentially look at what other communities in New Hampshire are now working with them, and we'll see if there is any kind of compelling success stories that start to come out of that would change our decision process over the course of the next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I brought that up. So that's it. That's all I had on Standard Power and the Community Power. And then the only other item on the agenda we had tonight was still the Ready for 100 in Newmarket, and that's kind of just been backburned with waiting for Ellen to respond. So I don't have anything to add to that right now. Does anybody else? To me, it's just not yeah, okay. And that's all I have. The only other thing that I'll mention is that, I've been working with Henry at Community Power on trying to put together this web browser template where, since I was doing it for Newmarket anyway with our energy consumption figures and our solar projects, I finally have that in, I think, good enough shape where I can share it with each of the committee members. So I'll send you a link and you can log in and look at it, and it's basically just a way, like I said, to browse the data that has already been submitted to us. And I think we've, I think it's in a way that it doesn't constitute any kind of public meeting because people aren't working on it simultaneously. You're basically just looking at data that's been handed to us.
Right.
Okay, so look for that link. I'll probably do that within either this week or next week. I'm starting to invite people in to take a look at that just for feedback to say, what do you know, and it's incomplete, but it's a nice, easy way to do it just from a web browser and look at data.
Is this the Airtable?
Yeah, so it's
Is
a
it-
combination of Airtable, and then the Airtable data is presented in this software packages called Second. So it does cost money. So the other thing is, I'm just trying to figure out, I'm just doing this on my own, and at some point, if it ends up going live, someone would have to cover the subscription costs to keep it going. So what I've been trying to convince Community Power is, I think this is something your members would like. You might want to think about putting up the subscription cost, which is not huge, as a way that you could roll it out to everybody if you pick it up. And so I've been basically donating my time to try to show that this is a model and how it would work. And it remains to be seen if it gains traction or not. But I would certainly be curious to hear, our own local interest in it. And I think it's a way. So the other thing is, I do want to talk to who's our administrative budget guy? What's his name? At Newmarket, the guy that did
Bill Tappan?
Bill. Yeah, I met Bill the other night, and I talked to him about trying to get further details on some of the energy bills. So he agreed he'd be happy to meet with me. So I'm going to try to set up that meeting too, because that's the same kind of thing I would want to, I basically, when I was talking to him, I said, how can we make your life easier that you have sort of a centralized place where you're just seeing, all of the various, whatever. I have no sense of what the Eversource bills are that come into the town or how they get paid.
Right.
So I'm just kind of trying to wrap my head around that, and he agreed to meet with me to talk about that. That's it. That's all I got.
Good.
Great.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's over. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Productive